Welcome to the RotoRob.com Fantasy Football Weekly plus ATS Picks. Each week, your hosts Josh Johnson and Nick Wagner will give you the goods to help you win your fantasy football crown.
Straight cash, homie. Talking about practice. Not a game. We talking about practice.
Playoffs? Don't talk about playoffs. You kidding me? Playoffs?
Welcome to the RotoRob Fantasy Football Weekly Podcast. I am Joshua Johnson. With me, as always, is Nick. Hail to the Redskins, Wagner. What is up, my friend?
Oh, not much. I'm just blown away by how many players keep getting in trouble. What, are we 3 days into the off season and already, I think, 5 or 6 arrests? It's crazy. Blows my mind. How you doing today, Josh?
I think we need to be in training camp all season long because that won't help. Won't help injuries at all, right? Yeah, I'm doing okay. It's a little cold here today, but we're doing all right. Got an extremely packed show for you. Very excited. Jack Follman making a second appearance from PacificTakes.com to talk about a whole slew of Pac-12 players. We have Jovontay Williams stopping by in about 40 minutes. He is a draft hopeful from Johnson C. Smith University in Georgia. Pretty sure it was Georgia, but so we're pretty excited to have him on, see what he has to say. Maybe a late round kind of flyer type of guy. So looking forward to that. And then finally after that we have Bob McGinn, who wrote a book about the Super Bowl, and he's also been a Packers beat writer since 1984. So we're gonna be in it deep today, and look forward to that. I know we are. So second and goal, Nick, from the half-yard line, as Irvin says. What do you say? Thoughts?
Well, in Bevel's defense, Marshawn Lynch was 1 for 5 this season from the 1-yard line, so it's not like it was 100% gimme.
Forget the fact that, excuse my language, that he was pissing on them all day with that ball up the middle. And did you see Darrell Bevel threw Ricardo Lockette under the bus? He said he could have maybe played through the ball a little bit more. Just like, really? That's what you take from that? I mean, come on. There was the element of surprise, I guess, with that play, but that's what they thought, even though apparently Malcolm Butler knew the play was coming. Also, I just got to say, people can blame that one play, but there was a whole last half of the third quarter and beginning of the fourth quarter where they had the ball and weren't able to get any points. And what were they doing? They were throwing. Yeah, there was a couple rushes in there, but they were throwing that ball around, and I'm just like, they could have easily taken 2 or 3 minutes more off the clock, even if they didn't get up, even if they still had to punt, but instead they were throwing the ball. Yeah, they were gaining yards, but they were still just throwing the ball when they could have been, you're up by 10, you start the fourth quarter. Why do you do anything else unless you need to get a first down on 3rd and 5, but hand the ball to Marshawn Lynch? I mean, am I right, Nick?
Yeah, I agree. Especially when you have a young quarterback, and no disrespect to Russell Wilson, I think he's got a great future in this league. He's already won a Super Bowl in just his 3rd year, but he is a young quarterback. So when you have a 10-point lead and one of the best running backs in the league, you're right. You got to run the ball more than they did.
Yeah. So, like I said, we have plenty of big guests on. We're also going to talk about the best number 7 in NFL history. Talk about a few contracts looming out there for free agency, a little bit of a Hall of Fame reaction. Nick's going to rant, of course, and we'll talk a little bit about Johnny Manziel and his future. Like I said, Jack will be joining us momentarily. Any thoughts there, Nick, on any other thoughts on the Super Bowl and any impressions about any thoughts there? Sorry.
Well, after that amazing catch, had I been New England's defensive coordinator, I would have just let him score. You would have had 1 or 2 timeouts left and a full minute to just go and get a field goal. I'm sure Tom Brady could have done that. So basically everything that happened from that catch on surprised me in that game.
Yeah, and in case you want you want to see a great reaction, I posted a picture of me, my son, and my mom watching the replay of that catch on Twitter. I think I labeled it 4 quarters, 3 generations, 2 great teams, 1 amazing Super Bowl, something like that. But, yeah, check that out on my Twitter page. That was just a great game. Very happy that we actually got a sweet game out of it all. So we got Jack on the phone here.
Hello.
Jack,
hello there.
Hey, welcome back.
I'm here. It's going good. Thanks for having me back.
No problem. We appreciate all your Pacific takes, I guess we could say. Kind of a shameless plug there for you, but hey, it's for you, so why not?
Yeah, I'll take it.
Before we move forward, I got to give you a little bit of guff. I was reading some of your stuff, and you had a Pac-12, and I guess it was called Pac-12, but you posted last week a Pac-12 all Super Bowl team of players from that conference that have played in the Super Bowl. Now, there was a couple Colorado players on there. Don't you think that was maybe cheating just a little bit?
Yeah, I've had a huge dilemma the last few years with when you do historical stuff or stuff like that of how to include Colorado or Utah players, because it's kind of like half the people complain about doing that, and then half the people are Colorado or Utah people who complain that they're not represented. So it also helps in that article because it's kind of actually hard in some of the positions to find the Pac-12 guys that have excelled in the Super Bowl.
Sure. Oh yeah, I understand why you did it, but me and Nick are kind of on the mutual agreement that what was Colorado doing, moving to the Pac-12 just to be a whipping boy? I mean, really, seriously, they should have.
Yeah. I feel bad for how they got there. But they decided to do it.
Yeah, that's on them. That is certainly on them. Well, we have a whole bunch of players to get to, so we are excited, like I said, to have you back. But let's just start out with Austin Hill, a guy that I'm kind of intrigued by. I don't exactly know why, but I'm excited about it. Of course, Austin Hill, wide receiver, Arizona Wildcats. What do you got on Austin for us there, Jack?
Well, he was actually 2 years ago, Matt Scott's senior year. He was, I believe, first-team All-Pac-12. He had just a ton of production with Matt Scott and Rich Rodriguez's offense. So then he missed, I believe he tore an ACL in the spring the next year and missed all of 2013. Then 2014, he had a good year, not a great year, kind of a little bit less production than I think most people would have thought. But I have heard that, as you can kind of imagine, he was never 100% during the season, which would make sense. He's a big guy. I think he's around 6'3", 210, 215, and can really go up and get the ball, but also was a good vertical threat for them, too, by going up and being able to get the ball. He's a guy who I think that injury and his lack of production will probably hurt his draft stock, but he's one of those guys that could end up being healthy, with the rookie and surprising people because he dropped to the 5th or 6th round, I think.
Yeah, most definitely. I see maybe just a little bit of Victor Cruz. I know they're not the same mold, but I see a little bit of Victor Cruz in him. I think he could just maybe tear up that seam for somebody there. Nick, any thoughts there on Austin Hill?
Yeah, you mentioned the torn ACL in the spring of 2013 and him being limited this year. I believe he had 4 catches or less in 11 games this year. Do you think he's going to be 100% recovered in time to do all the testing and the combine and all that?
I'm not sure, but I would think, that's been a long time since the end of the season. It's been a few months. I'd have to look to see how he performed in the Fiesta Bowl, but I don't remember him obviously having a huge game or anything. I would kind of be concerned about that. That's why I would be afraid of him dropping a bit, but I don't know if he's a super big combine guy regardless, so I don't think it would kill his stock, because I think I haven't tied him in the 40 or anything, but he's kind of more of a bigger, seam receiver than a guy who's going to blow you away with pure measurables.
Okay. Keeping with the receivers, Jaelen Strong, Arizona State Sun Devils.
Jaelen Strong, he's one of those guys. I feel like the Pac-12, every conference is probably the same way. There's a handful of guys each year who they look like an NFL player playing in college. Maybe they might not put up, the gigantic numbers of some other guys, but they just have that look, feel, the kind of player. He's a long athlete. He's like 6'4", 210, who can go up and get the ball, but also because he's a little bit more rangier than some of the other big receivers. He's not a possession guy necessarily. He can make a lot of plays downfield, and he had a little bit of a better, I think, sophomore year than the junior year, but I think that might have came from some injuries at quarterback and teams kind of keying in on him a little bit more. I think he probably is one of those guys who is a borderline, right on the border of the first and second when those teams are looking for receivers.
Yeah, always need is certainly indicative, especially in that end of that first round. So any thoughts there on Jaelen Strong, Nick? Questions?
Well, you mentioned that he's not really a possession guy. Do you think he's got the speed to be a true deep threat, or is there a danger that he could kind of be like a tweener, not quite fast enough to be a deep threat and not big enough to be a possession guy?
I think they actually kind of hit the nail right there, because I think that's kind of where he falls. Because, yeah, he has all the tools to be a possession guy, but he's maybe not as big and straight up strong as someone like a 6'3", 225 guy, or even like a 6'1", 225 guy. But he's also probably at the NFL level. He's not. I don't think he's like a straight up vertical receiver. So I guess he could fall into that category, but that might actually be a plus, because I mean sometimes he might not be your number one receiver, but everyone can use a guy who can do a little bit of everything.
Yeah, you look at a guy like Des Bryant, who's obviously a number one receiver, one of the top 5 in the NFL, but he only averaged 5 touches a game. It's not like he's out there doing, getting 8 for 120 every game. I know that would be amazing, but you got to think about those type of players. And I'm not saying he's going to be that type of impact player, but just because it's a number one receiver doesn't mean that there's a guy out there that's going to be possession receiver. We're talking about possession receivers. We're talking about Brian Hartline. We're talking about, Derek Mason was amazing back in the day. Players like that, when we say possession receiver. So I think Strong could certainly be a heavy hitter, and I think he's going to be a better prospect than Amari Cooper. I think he's has that home run hitter mentality, and I think we're going to see that out of him at the next level. So, moving forward, this is a guy I like, and I fell really hard in love with him watching him play in the Senior Bowl, and that's Steven Nelson, cornerback, Oregon State Beavers. What do you got on him for us, Jack?
Yeah, I kind of agree. He was the Beavers kind of have a knack for, under Mike Riley, producing those guys who just quietly are great players that don't really get any accolades and produce and go on to have long NFL careers, but even then you kind of never get the star status, and I think he's kind of one of those guys. He had a good number of interceptions as a junior, and I think people kind of wrote him off as just a guy who, he got lucky and grabbed some picks, and then he kind of got attention for that. But he showed up as a senior, was their number one lockdown guy, and had a great season, and he's big. So I think he's around 5'11", 195, 200, kind of one of those guys who's big and physical, but has speed and great ball skills, as he's shown by having a knack for grabbing interceptions. He arguably, I think you could make a case for him maybe being the top Pac-12 cornerback in the draft on pure pro potential, who wasn't kicked off his team.
yeah, most definitely. The Pac-12 is such a passing league, so I don't think it's any coincidence that they're producing some great DBs by any stretch of the imagination. Nick, any thoughts there on Nelson?
Well, I was surprised you say he could be the top Pac-12 corner pro potential. I was wondering if Ego Ekpe-Olumu was 100% healthy and had not had the torn ACL, would you take Nelson over Olumu?
It would be tough. I'm not huge on. I haven't been huge on Ekpe-Olumu. I don't want to get kind of too on the side of too much of him, but I'd say they're neck and neck, because I think Nelson's a little bit bigger, and I think Ekpe-Olumu is listed at 5'10", but I've seen him on draft sites as being speculated being smaller, and I don't think that I love smaller cornerbacks in the NFL right now, so I'd be tempted, regardless if the Ekpe-Olumu was healthy or not.
Okay. Nick, any more questions there on Nelson?
Just one more. Some scouts I've heard say he's a little bit over aggressive. Do you think he's got enough makeup speed if that continues at the pro level?
That's a legitimate concern with him because he's not. I don't believe he's a burner type of cornerback, and he's going to have to learn how to, at the next level, not be overly aggressive and, try to make those plays on the ball in college because, it's a completely different game. That's a legitimate concern because, the ball is coming a lot hotter from an NFL quarterback, and those receivers aren't the Pac-12 guys who are, you maybe can, be an athlete like him and recover easily. So that's probably something that he's going to have to work on.
Okay. What about the quarterback, same team, Sean Mannion? What do you got on him for?
Mannion is, he had a disappointing final season in Corvallis. I think because he wasn't throwing to Marcus Wheaton or Brandon Cook, so that makes that a little bit harder. But I like him. I'm not going to say that I'm in love with him as a player overall. I think where Mannion he might have a lot more success than you think is there's just not that many guys coming out of college anymore who can drop back and throw a pass and throw it accurately and make those plays. He has a low ceiling because he's not mobile and he's not, a pure physical freak or anything, and he wasn't, he didn't put up the numbers that some other guys coming out did. But I think in the long run, that's really going to help him out because we see guys like Ryan Lindley and Jeff Toole starting NFL games who were kind of, not great athletes, great players, but you just kind of don't remember much of them in college. I think he could be one of those guys. He probably doesn't have a gigantic ceiling, but that's kind of what I like about him.
Let's not curse him with the Lindley comment, though. That might not be fair, but that's why I think he has a really good chance to find a spot in the league at least. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Nick, any thoughts there on Mannion?
Yeah, I think he's listed at somewhere around 6'5", 230, and usually when you think that, you think of a quarterback with a real strong arm. Does Mannion fit that mold?
He's not a guy who has an arm that's going to jump out on that. I really think jumps out at you when you watch him. Does he have not a strong arm? No, but I think he's kind of seems to be a middle of the road guy, other than his great size and a lot of things, and I think arm strength might be one of those.
Okay. Moving on. Like I said, we have a whole lot to get to, and just so you know, we actually had a Oregon Ducks blogger on last week. That's why there's no Ducks listed here, but we'll maybe get your thoughts on one of them at the end here. Andrus Peat, offensive tackle, Stanford Cardinal.
Peat is he's your typical guy who has everything you can't teach, but kind of just always never really seemed to put together the intangible, the technique and that kind of stuff and the polish that you would love to see that could have turned him into a top 5 pick. I think he measures in around 6'7", 315, 320, and he can move really well. He's the best, probably in my opinion, he's the best purely athletic offensive lineman in the draft this year, probably by a good stretch, but he probably going to drop maybe to the second or third lineman taken because he just never really saw him put it all together. He's one of those guys, in my opinion. But not to, focus on that too much. He's an amazing, amazing prospect.
Okay. Yeah, I kind of think the Collins kid out of LSU is pretty athletic too. I think those two guys should be the top two, but I'm not. I'm obviously not an NFL GM, so yeah, I like Peat a lot too. I love. Obviously, everybody's gonna see the size, and think, oh yeah, it's cornerstone tackle. But there's only a couple of those every so often, so there's not a whole lot about there. Nick, any thoughts there on Peat?
Well, you mentioned that he's a little raw on the technique side. Do you think he's ready to play left tackle right away, or is he going to take a year or two of seasoning at right tackle before he can move over to the left side?
I think it would depend on what team he ends up on. If he goes to a team that, really needs left tackle, I think he can slide in right away. But if there's a team, that has the ability to give him a year or two to kind of adjust, I think he will. And I don't want to seem like, I think people kind of becomes a popular opinion to say that he's super unpolished. He's not completely. I mean, he played at Stanford. I think he was a starter for 3 years there in a super advanced run offense. So I think he needs a little bit of polishing. So I think if you have that ability, I would probably do that. But if you need a guy who needs to go right away, I wouldn't be scared of putting him out there at left tackle.
Okay. Same team, cornerback Alex Carter. Don't know really anything about this guy. The kind of a second, third round talent. Looks like that's all really know. What do you got for us?
Yeah, an interesting guy. I believe he came out of high school as a linebacker, so he has great size and great physicality, which really fit in well at Stanford. I think he's 6 foot 205 or 5'11" ish, around 200 pounds. He's another kind of guy who, before this year, it seemed like a guy who had it all physically, but never really seemed to put it together. But this year was the year he kind of started to put it together and really improved Stanford's pass defense. Before it kind of been the liability of their defense, but he's a guy who I really like his physicality. A guy who's not afraid, who can mix it up with NFL receivers and can support in the run. So I think he's really done well in improving his stock.
Okay, Nick, any thoughts there?
So would you think he's probably going to be the guy that's going to rise in the next couple months then up draft charts?
I could definitely see that. I'd be a little bit concerned about how fast he might run because he's a huge guy. He looks like, a hard-hitting safety, but I think people will see them. I think it depends on how he runs, basically, because people will love his height and weight, but if he runs a slow 40, it might actually hurt him. But if he runs a fast one, he could actually probably push himself up into the first round. And I'll admit, I don't really know what he's probably going to run.
Okay. Brett Hundley, UCLA. Obviously, have been some up and down buzz about him. I think if the draft was 2, 3, maybe even 6 months ago, I think he probably would have been a definite first-round pick. Now he's kind of maybe end of the first round, second, maybe even third round someplace. What do you got?
Yeah, one of the hardest guys to peg, especially at quarterback coming out of the Pac-12, I can remember in quite a while, because he has it all physically, and he always has. I think he's 230 and a super fast guy with a really good arm who just doesn't seem to he seems to kind of fall short on the little things and never seem to win as much as people expected. And honestly, I think the worst thing for him might have been having Marcus Mariota in the conference, because everyone kind of compared him to Mariota through his whole career and kind of measured him up short because of that. But I like him. I'm not going to say that he's a slam dunk prospect or anything, but I think if he's around in the second round and you're one of those teams that doesn't get Winston or Mariota, I think I would take him in a heartbeat, because you can't teach what he has, and he has the size to, probably stand up in the NFL. And he was a really good quarterback. He just never seemed to, get that little sliver that maybe put him from like an A- to an A, in my opinion.
Okay. Certainly, maybe they've died down a little bit, but there's been some Chip Kelly, Philadelphia Eagle rumors with Hundley. So certainly something to watch for if they can't trade up for Mariota, I guess that is. Nick, any thoughts there on Hundley?
Well, it's funny how the quarterbacks move up and down draft boards. And this time last year, I think Teddy Bridgewater was the consensus number 1 quarterback. But so that being said, do you see him as the number 3 quarterback available, and is there any chance that he could maybe go up into the top 2?
Yeah, I would put him at number 3 for sure. In my opinion, I think that's where he kind of stands right now, and I could definitely see him moving up. I think he kind of doesn't, the way he plays doesn't exactly remind me of like a Jake Locker, but he's that kind of guy who physically he's going to, once they start looking at the physical stuff, he's going to jump up all the boards. Whether that gets him into the top 2, I don't know, but we've seen it a million times, it seems like, where a quarterback who has a lot of questions of how much he won in college, how much does he throw too many interceptions, does he not have it between the ears, but people just fall in love with what he can do physically, and I think he's exactly that kind of guy. Getting into the top 2, I think that's a possibility, because the top 2 guys, and Winston and Mariota are very, in my opinion, are very shaky as 1 and 2 guys. I don't think it would be that impossible for someone to see, a 6'3", 230 guy who can run, who has a bigger arm than maybe Mariota, who doesn't have the off-the-field stuff that Winston does. I could see a team, saying, well, we don't want to, we actually like him more, so we might as well take him at number 2. Would I bet on that? Probably not.
And I think there's maybe a little something to be said about a guy that certainly endured some struggles his senior year. He didn't quit on his team. He certainly hung in there, and he had some injuries and kept playing. I mean, he could have easily just shut it down and said, well, I'm going to be drafted anyway. And he didn't. I like the kid too. I mean, but I'd be totally surprised. I know people are saying Mariota's going to the Jets 6 or whatever it is. If Tennessee and Tampa don't take quarterbacks 1 and 2, what the hell are they doing? I see a very upset fan of those teams if that's not the case. No offense to Mettenberger or Mike Lennon, but I just don't. You're going to have to help me out with this next name, Jack. I don't even want to try to pronounce it. Defensive end for UCLA. Balls in your court? I believe
it is Owa Magbi Odighizuwa. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I'm pretty sure that's the exact. We're going to trust you. We're going to trust you on that one.
Okay.
Yeah. He's another guy like Hill who I believe he missed the whole 2013 season, then came back for his senior year and he is the opposite, where he had a great senior year and really, really, really helped his draft stock, and actually kind of was more of a fringe prospect before he came back from injury, and looked fantastic, and kind of a UCLA front that I think a lot of people were disappointed with at times. He was the biggest bright spot at a lot of times. He's big. He's not the long kind of rangy guy. He's more of a stout 6'3", 270 guy, but he has that weight, which is my favorite thing. He has the weight to, he's not like a 240, 235, 245 guy who, automatically, well, God, that guy's going to have to gain weight to, to play on the edge in NFL. He's big and he's relentless and he's fast to get into the passer, and he seems, every time I look at a draft board, he seems to be rising almost to where sometimes I believe I see him going late in the first round.
Yeah, I've seen him up that high too. Nick, any thoughts there?
You mentioned he's a great pass rusher. Has he got the run stopping skills to be an every down lineman?
I think he definitely can. I'd have to go back to look at UCLA's run stats and individual plays of how well he held up against the run, but I don't know if it's been, a huge calling card for him. That is why I like the fact that he's 270, is that he's a guy who, has a better shot at being an every down guy than most guys are going to find in his range who maybe check in. Because once you get out of the elite pass rushers, a lot of times it's really hard to find a guy who's above that kind of 245 range that, doesn't have the question of, is he going to have the size to play at the next level? So I think he does at least have the potential to do it.
Did he lock horns with Peat at Stanford at all? Did they have any battles? I mean, just not battles, but just, matchups, essentially?
They definitely played this year. They wouldn't have been the year before because Odighizuwa was out for the year. But they definitely played this year in a game that Stanford really dominated them in a kind of a surprising game in the Rose Bowl. As far as individually, I don't know how that matchup went for both of them, but Stanford really rolled them offensively, so I can't imagine it was that great for Odighizuwa, but don't hold me to that. I don't want to go back and look at the box and see that he got 2.5 sacks or something. So
All right.
I'm not going to bet on that.
Connor Holiday, quarterback, Washington State.
A guy that I think everyone feels really bad for, because not like he was tearing up record books until he got taken down by USC with a really, really awful injury that I know has thrown a lot of questions to whether or not he's ever going to even try to play again. He's had a bad injury history. I believe as a freshman or a sophomore, he had like a lacerated liver or kidney or something really gruesome like that, but he was able to come back from that. Really tough kid, put up a ton of numbers in Mike Leach's offense, but how much that means I don't really know, because they had a walk-on come in to replace him who put up really good numbers. He's a gunslinger, kind of a rangy guy. That's probably why you have to be really concerned about him in the NFL, because he's 6'4", but I wouldn't be surprised if he measured in as less than 200 pounds. But
yeah,
if he can, he's a tough kid. If he can bounce back from it and get a shot, I'd say the same thing I said about Mannion. I mean, he's got a little bit more questionable because he's so light, but he can drop back and make a pass. He's accurate. He's a little bit of a gunslinger, but at the NFL, that doesn't seem to hurt you as much as in college. People seem to not care as much, but I hope he can. I hope he gets a shot, and I wouldn't be totally shocked if he's a guy who ends up, making a roster somewhere, because everyone seems to need a guy who can simply, drop back and make a pass in the pro-style offense at this time in the NFL.
Okay, Nick, any thoughts there?
Yeah, are there any other Mike Leach quarterbacks that you would compare him to? Is he similar to like a Cliff Kingsbury or Graham Harrell, or has he kind of got his own style?
He's kind of got his own. He's a unique guy. I don't remember a ton of exactly the differences between a lot of the old Texas Tech quarterbacks, but he's a very unique guy. He's as I said, he's really tall and skinny. He's like, I think at one point he was like 6'4", 185. He's a fiery guy. He seems to always, every game he was playing, he always seemed to be going back and forth with the opposing sidelines. He's not afraid to throw it in there for better or worse. He loves to throw the ball over and over and over and over again. I mean, everyone does that in Mike Leach's offense, but he seemed to be a guy who had a really great personality, or at least fun to watch. So I'm not sure about that.
Okay, Nelson Aguilar, wide receiver, USC.
Nelson Aguilar.
Aguilar, okay.
He's the guy who.
Better.
Oh, that's okay. I mean, I probably will mess up on a few of them, and I've been trying to watch them as much as I can for the past few years. Aguilar is he's a guy who's not big. He's fast, but he's very fast and athletic. And when he's kind of one of those guys, when he gets hot, he can rip off 200+ yards in a game and a couple touchdowns. The only question I have about him is why I feel like I saw him drop down draft board. He was never as productive as I feel people wanted him to, and he seemed to have his best games against bad competition. He would tear up a Cal or a WSU, but when USC really needed him to have a big game, I felt like against UCLA and some other games they lost, he never seemed to rise to the occasion, and he's not the biggest guy. I think he's 5'11 and a half, 6 foot, around the 185, 190 range. So he's not the biggest guy, so I think that kind of, drops him a slight bit behind the elite group of receivers that are going to go in the first round.
Okay. Nick, any thoughts there?
I feel like it's deja vu, and I could have heard that exact same scouting report from Marquise Lee last year. Do you think that's kind of a fair comparison?
Yeah, it's been USC's kind of had a run of very similar receivers. I'd almost put Robert Woods kind of in that category too. Yeah, he's very similar to Lee. I would say Lee was maybe a little bit more productive earlier in his career, but did have kind of a slightly disappointing as far as production goes junior year. I think they're very similar players.
Okay. Well, I love Lee and Woods, so now I'm really intrigued. Somebody else that really intrigues me a lot, Josh Shaw, cornerback, USC Trojans. What do you got on Shaw for us?
Yeah, definitely going to be one of the more the strangest Pac-12 stories you're going to see in this year's draft. Shaw, looked like a guy who I think some people were even saying could play his way into, late first, early second round, because he's a big physical guy with, a typical USC guy with everything you want, the full package, but maybe he hadn't quite put it together before his senior year, and people kind of envisioned him, maybe new staff. He comes in, if he has a great year, this guy's kind of the limit, but as we all know, he had one of the weirdest off-season, off-the-field incidents in this year of college football, and that's really obviously kind of blew up his potential. But he did he did all the right things after that. He stayed on the team and was able to get himself some playing time at the end of the year. And I think that's going to get him drafted. Is he going to be nearly as high as he would have been if he just would have, stayed out of weird incidents and played? No, but I think he's still a guy who just, is so talented that it's going to be hard to completely pass him up.
Yeah, I believe you're referring to he saved his nephew from drowning or something like that. Is that right?
Yeah, he right before the season, just like a few days, I believe, he had a thing where he sprained both his ankles and claimed that it was he jumped out of a window or tried to jump into a pool to save his nephew from drowning and, tweaked both his ankles landing by a pool, but then it very quickly came out, it was everywhere, national news, feel-good story, but within like a day it came out that it was completely fabric. And then he was very dicey about what actually happened, and there was police involved, and it basically resulted in him not playing for most of the year because it was a very weird situation.
Yeah. Well, he's kind of one of those guys that I think helped his stock by playing in the East-West Bowl, too. And I think he's going to – maybe it was the Senior Bowl. I can't remember which one. But, I think if people look past that, I think there's a pretty darn good player under there. He's made mistakes. Hopefully that's going to be the last one. Marcus Peters, cornerback, Washington Huskies.
That's a perfect transition to another Pac-12 cornerback who kind of has it all physically, but had a weird year that didn't end well because of stuff that was off the field. Marcus Peters, I think basically a lot of people say that if he hadn't gotten dismissed from Washington halfway through the season, about that he was the top cornerback in the draft, maybe even the top 10 guy, because he kind of has it all. He's around 6 foot, maybe 5'11 and a half, 200 pounds, 195, and he's really fast. He's got great ball skills. He's intense. He can break on the ball really fast, and has a great, physicality. But as we all know, it sounds like throughout his whole career, he was an issue with the Washington coaching staff through a couple different staffs, and eventually it resulted in him getting kicked off the team.
Yeah, certainly a different situation there. Nick, what are your thoughts there?
Well, I think you kind of answered the question I was going to answer. If it had been kind of a long-term thing or just a one really bad incident that got him kicked, then kind of an ongoing issue with him.
Yeah,
What?
It kind of, no one had really knew when it came out, and fans were upset about seeming like Chris Peterson might have been, too big of a disciplinarian on him, but it later came out that I think he had been suspended for a game at least by Sarkisian's staff, and it had been a kind of a multi-incident thing because he had to set out a game earlier in his senior year, and kind of the rumors that were flying were not pleasant, whether or not they ended up being true or not.
Okay, last one, and we just got a couple minutes left here, Jack. Obviously, a first-round talent here, Danny Shelton, defensive tackle, Washington Huskies. What do you got for us?
I truly can kind of say he's a guy. I haven't been following the Pac-12 forever as far as the NFL draft goes, but he's a guy who's kind of a one-of-a-kind guy. I've never really seen someone like him who checks in probably higher than 340 pounds, but I believe at one point, halfway through the season, was leading Washington in tackles, and he was also in sacks as well. He was up among the nation's leader in sacks as a guy who was 340 pounds who was making plays all over the field. I mean, you just don't see that. He's a guy who I think at a different time, maybe even as soon as 7 or 8 years ago, would be talked about as the potential number one pick, but because, straight-up nose tackles, nose guards aren't nearly as valued as they used to be, he probably drops down a bit, but I think he's going to be that rare guy at that position who is so intriguing, so ridiculously athletic for his size that he's still going to go very, very high.
Okay, Nick, any thoughts there?
Do you think the Baltimore Ravens tackled Haloti Ngata might be a fair comparison there as far as athleticism?
Yeah, I think that's a good comparison of the rare guy who is that gigantic, kind of a once every 10-year guy, 10 years guy who's just that gigantic but also that athletic. I know as far as production goes, Shelton might have even been more of a guy who can get after the passer a little bit and make plays over the field, but Nada might be a little bit more of a guy who by himself completely shuts down the run game.
Yeah, when you see Shelton on the field, he just kind of has that bump in the middle of him, and I'm sure that's where that extra 30, 40 pounds is. But yeah, you're just really surprised by how he can move. It's pretty amazing. So, Jack, I want to thank you so much for joining us. Jack Follman, Pacific Takes. And I know we gave you a lot of names, but you answered the bell, and we really appreciate it.
Well, I hope so. Thank you, guys.
All right, thank you, and we will definitely have you back.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, Jovontay should be calling in here in just 1 second. And there he is. Just like that, we're on. Jovontay, are you there?
Yes, sir. How you doing?
Good. How's it going today?
Well, I'm doing good. Just got through doing our training from earlier. So, last time, got my legs back in. Okay.
Cool. Yeah, no problem. We're having just a little bit of trouble hearing you there, Jovontay, but it's Jovontay Williams, edge rusher, I guess we'll call you, Johnson C. Smith University, draft hopeful. So we thank you so much for joining us. Jovontay, Nick's got a couple more questions, so I'm going to let him fire away first, okay?
Okay.
Well, I see you averaged over 1 sack per game in your college career. That's just crazy to me. I was wondering, how would you describe yourself as a pass rusher? More of a power guy or a technician or just kind of an all-around rusher? What do you think?
I would say more of an all-around rusher, because I got various different moves I can use in certain situations. But, it's not too much, nothing really different to it, just a predominant kind of edge rusher type of guy. I can stop the run, too, don't get me wrong, but it's just my major and my great abilities comes from pass rush.
Okay. What do you say to the people that are going to look and see what school you went to and maybe cast you aside as not a real threat right away? What are you going to say to those people?
Can you say that again?
What are you going to say to the people that just look at the university that you come from and think, well, we're just not going to take him seriously, at least not yet. What do you say to those people?
Well, as far as if it's dealing with some NFL managers and stuff, far as like, we're not going to get that guy a look because he went to a smaller school. Everyone knows it doesn't matter what school you're at. It's all about the game that you play. And I felt that I dominated my level of play at John C. Smith HBCU Division II. I felt I dominated that level, so therefore it should be an eye-opener of, okay, he can handle some of these big guys that he, will go against. So he's taking a chance on me, it'll be good because me being an older guy at that, it's like I still have that hunger. When I be able to get into somebody's camp, it'll be, that hunger will still be there. I won't be the type that'll get thrown off by the, the lights and the glamour and all that. Because I know I'm there for a business. I'm there to do what I have to do. So the small school thing, I wouldn't let that be much of a factor because, like a lot of, think about it, the dude Butler from the Super Bowl, he went to a Division II, West Alabama, and he was working at Popeyes last year.
Yeah, even Michael Strahan, the university is eluding me now because it's not a major one, but it's certainly somebody that played the same position as you, and certainly somebody that had a lot of success. Nick, what do you got for him?
Yeah, from what you've heard from scouts, do you think you're more likely going to be a defensive end in a 4-3 or an outside linebacker in a 3-4? And also, were you asked to drop into coverage much there at Johnson C. Smith University?
This year, I was asked to drop in coverage a lot because a couple of teams contacted my coaches and told them they would like to see me, doing some dropbacks or whatnot. But, the little dropbacks I did a lot of them, but, the ball never came my way. So, I was kind of upset about that, but I made sure the scouts was able to see my hip movements and see me, adjusting to picking up certain routes and stuff like that. But, a lot of scouts haven't really been talking to me, You know, I've just been getting a lot of inside ears. You know, people been saying that, you know, I can be a defensive end in a 4-3 or I could be an outside linebacker because I can move good too, you know, to be in a 3-4. To be honest, my preference, I wouldn't really care, you know, because I'm at 265 pounds now. Being up here training in Tennessee, I done put on some good muscle mass. And, you know, either way you have me, I'll be able to do the job, you know. If I have to play outside linebacker, I'm willing to learn and learn how to play that. If you leave me in the dirt, I'm good at that too.
All right. Excuse me. Are you going to the Combine?
I'm not going to the one in Indianapolis, but I'm going to the NFL Regional Combine that's taking place February 7th down in Miami. I'm going to be down there this weekend.
Okay. Nick, any next question there, bud?
Yeah, you know, it's a strange time, I think, for a player between the last college game and the draft. I was wondering, do you use this time in prospects in general? Do you currently focus primarily on preparing for the Combine workouts, or are you also getting some technique work in, too?
To be really honest with you, I knew that my regional Combine date was coming up real close, and I just started working out the 1st of January. That's when I just got to Tennessee. And to be honest, coming up until February, you know, until this weekend, it's been mostly technique type things, like not far as my position, but far as for the 40, for the L, the 20-yard shoulder, you know, the numbers game. And we've been mainly focusing on that. You know, we've been doing a lot of heavy sets in the weight room. We've been doing a lot of weight room stuff for the legs and for the upper body, back, stuff like that. But it's been mostly training on the 40s, you know, the different times and different measurements and all that good stuff. But I know once I get back on Sunday and on Monday when we start back, that's when we're going to have our position coaches come, and they're going to be teaching us. And I'm going to be going through more of the position, you know, training then.
Okay. Jovontay, what are people going to really notice about you that we're not going to see, like, in your highlight reel, or if, you know, we just watch a breakdown of a game? What are they going to notice about you if we sit down and watch a whole game?
Are you going to notice my hands? You know, that's one thing that's always been a good blessing for me, is that I'm good with my hands and my first step, my takeoff. You know, because I'm the type to believe that, you know, your takeoff is the most important thing going against an offensive lineman, because they're already back a good distance from the ball, and, you know, you already have a good 2 yards in front of you all. So it's like your get-off has to be the best thing. And I know in my case, my get-off and me using my hands is, you know, two of the top things that you'll notice about me. And then my standout, you know, I got a nice size for myself, so you'll see these muscles running around. You know, who wouldn't want to look at that?
Yeah. Nick, any questions there?
On kind of a lighter note, I saw that your pregame ritual is you drink some Pedialyte before every game. Have you checked with the NFL just to double check and make sure there's no banned ingredients in that? We've seen guys get suspended for some silly things.
Oh, no, I haven't checked or did anything like that because I haven't got to that close. You know, like I told you, I haven't even heard anything from NFL teams yet. So I believe after this weekend, you know, when I do these good numbers at the Combine, I'll probably get a lot of attention then. But, you know, if it gets to that point and I have to look, and then, you know, I won't drink Pedialyte. If anything, you get into that level, you know, they got stuff that'll help you out anyway. And, you know, that was just a ritual I did for high school and college. So, you know, if I'm able to continue it when I get to that level, you know, I continue because that's something I do, like Marshawn and his Skittles. You know, a couple other guys and their pickle juice, you know. That's what I think. So, you know, if it gets to that point where it got certain ingredients in it, then I can't take it, then, you know, I just have to cut it out, drink some water, take it back original.
As long as you don't mix the Skittles and the pickle juice, I think you might be all right.
Yeah, you're right.
But who knows, man? Maybe that's the magic. I don't know. We just don't know. But I'm not going to be the first.
Stuff happening now, right?
Nick, any further questions there, bud?
Well, I watched the highlight reel, and I agree with you. Your first step is definitely noticeable on tape, and I hope some scouts definitely give you a shot because you've earned it, I think.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
Yeah, we totally appreciate you coming on, and I hope that you can do us a favor when you when you become Rookie of the Year or named your first Pro Bowl, that you'll come back and join us. All right, bud?
Speak it to existence. Oh yes, sir. I always got to remember where you started from, right? You know?
Yes, sir.
Y'all came at me at this time, and, you know, y'all had many other people to interview, but, luckily I was chosen to do an interview, and I'm very thankful for that. And, those are the certain things that people remember.
Sure. Well, we appreciate you doing it, and we wish you all the luck in the world, and go tear it up at that regional combine.
Oh, yeah. I'll be sure to tweet the numbers out for everyone because it's going to be a shocker. I had did good today when we had did some of our little thing. Today was my last day of doing all of my training because, you got to give your legs sometimes to rest and stuff. So, like I say, today I just been pumped today because of the numbers I did today. It's like, oh, man, who would have known that it would come this fast, the dream that you always been thinking about growing up. So I'm just blessed to have the opportunity.
All right, well, check out Jovontay on Twitter. It's BigTay_33. The guy's going places, so get in now, man. We appreciate you, Jovontay.
Thank you again. Bye.
Certainly a respectable young man there, and hopefully he's going to make somebody happy, very happy at the end of the draft. And if he doesn't get drafted, I think you're going to see a lot of a motivated, maybe an even further motivated player. So definitely good to have him on. Nick, Bob's going to be on in about 4 minutes here, but what are your thoughts about this Ndamukong Suh contract? Is he really worth it? I mean, and I don't mean to really put you in a bad place, but we've seen the Stubblefield and the Hainsworth contracts. Obviously, there's completely different other things going on there, but especially in Hainsworth's regard. But these older players, they certainly earn these contracts, but are they worth?
Yeah, it's tough to say. Suh is a 4-time All-Pro. They say the franchise tag, if they were to slap him with that, would cost the Lions $26.7 million against the cap. So I don't really see how that could be an option, especially when they've already got $40 million between just Calvin Johnson and Matt Stafford. Although Johnson did indicate that he'd be willing to restructure his contract in order to keep Ndamukong Suh. But yeah, you mentioned 28 years old, kind of getting up there as far as offering a guy a long-term deal. Likely he's going to want some J.J. Watt money, which was around a $100 million contract. And like you mentioned, Albert Hainsworth made me a little bit biased against the top defensive tackle in the game with the history of stomping on their opponents. But, ESPN did report that one team source said that they would actually rather keep Ndamukong Suh than Calvin Johnson. That surprised me a little bit.
Yeah, and let's not forget that Suh has had some issues. He hasn't been suspended for drug use or anything major, but he's got a bit of a temper, I guess we'll put it mildly at that. And you wonder what kind of situation that's going to possibly get him into when he does start to deteriorate, as his skills deteriorate as he gets older. It's one of those things where you can't. He's been a phenomenal player, but you can't expect him to keep that up, especially considering he'll probably get, he probably wants a 4 or 5 year deal. You can't expect him he's going to be that same type of player at the end of that stretch with, just taking that constant beating every single play. You watch as the draft approaches, I watch more and more film, and especially film on offensive linemen. You just think about their backs. Every single play, they're just bumping chest, 340-pound man versus, 300-pound man, and you think about that, especially at the NFL level, and how long they can continue to do that. I just don't know. And of course, I bring it up because the Raiders have been heavily rumored to recruiting him. Obviously, I'm not going to complain, but I'm going to expect results, and immediately expect results when you're getting that kind of money. So I mean, there's certainly that kind of stigma that comes with it as well. So, like I said, Bob's going to be joining us here in just a few minutes. Bob is been a Green Bay Packers beat writer since 1984, and he also wrote a book called The Ultimate Super Bowl Book. It's a couple different versions now. It's just a lot of just in-depth stories, and obviously the stats and whatnot from every Super Bowl up till I think the Super Bowl 46. So obviously he's going to have to keep putting out a new a new version every 3 or 4 years or so. But looking forward to have him on. While we're in the contract range, Nick, and waiting here, what do you think about Marshawn Lynch? I mean, Seattle's been rumored to just giving him a whole ton of money. What are your thoughts there?
Well, this year he counted $8 million against the cap. I think he's set to count $8.5 million next year, but only take home about $5 million. Reportedly, they offered him over $10 million, I think, for next year in a long-term deal. It's really tough to lock up a running back who's going to be 29 next season. But to me, there's no question the Seahawks would not have made the Super Bowl without Marshawn Lynch, and if they don't have him next year, they will not be in the Super Bowl next year. So, and plus, to me, it's nice to see an organization that's had success like the Seahawks have reward a player who has outperformed the contract that he's currently on.
Yeah, there was a lot of rumors flying this preseason that he would not be back. People thought that he might even get traded during the preseason. There was, all kinds of rumors, and they obviously were able to come to an agreement, and they had some pretty good results. Getting a lot further than a lot of other teams, certainly. So, yeah, it's a hard call, especially when we know if a running back is 29, he might as well be 35. It's a different animal with some of those type of players, and it's a hard call. I mean, you want to reward people with that big contract, but you wonder what it's going to what it's going to mean, as for the life of that contract, and how far will they be able to take it. It's a hard call. So like I said, Bob should be joining us here hopefully momentarily. I'm just sending him an email here. But what's moving forward, Nick? What are your thoughts on the Hall of Fame, the guys that got in, and those that didn't?
You know what? I don't have any major issues with it. I'd probably have gone Kevin Green over Charles Haley, but I guess the voters like Haley's 5 Super Bowl wins. To me, the linebacker, the pass rusher, isn't a position like quarterback where you have that much of an impact on the overall team's performance. So I don't like to judge linebackers on championships like I would a quarterback, but apparently the voters feel different. And I was a little surprised, too, that Will Shields got in over Orlando Pace, but I definitely won't argue it. I mean, Shields never missed a start for a Kansas City ground game that was very feared when he was playing. He was paving the way for guys like Priest Holmes and Larry Johnson to lead the league in rushing. And plus, now that Will Shields is in, can another guard, Joe Jacoby, get in finally?
Oh, I knew that was coming. Oh, excuse me. Well, obviously, very, very happy about Tim Brown, although I was kind of looking forward to really getting mad about it for a whole nother year. Very happy for Jerome Bettis. Those two guys that should have got in. Pace, I don't know what these guys are trying to prove by not letting these guys in the first couple of years. It just seems really, really just, I don't know, just not nice. Put it in terms that I can say on the radio waves, but yeah, I just don't get it. But very happy for the guys that got in. Tingelhoff obviously is the guy that should have been in the moment he was available, moment he was eligible, I should say. But that's the game, and I'm glad they have this the senior committee thing that helps things. And gets these older players back in. Obviously, that's the reason Raymond Guy is in there too. So it's a tough call, but Kevin Green. I guess I don't know what more Kevin Green could have done to get in, but I just don't know. I don't know what he was supposed to do at all by any means. So I actually have Bob's number, so we're gonna give him a call here. Sorry, didn't realize this was going to take that long to set up. Okay, Bob is here, actually. Bob, are you there? Oh.
Hello.
Hey, Bob, are you there?
Yes.
Bob, you're on with RotoRob Fantasy Football Weekly with Nick and Josh. How's it going?
Yeah, not bad at all, guys.
Well, obviously, we want to thank you so much for joining us. You wrote the Ultimate Super Bowl book. There's been 2 editions, games 1 to 43, and the second edition was 1 to 46.
Right.
Something you'll have to obviously keep updating. You've also been a Packers beat writer full-time since 1984 and part-time for 5 years before that. So we want to thank you so much for joining us. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you were at the Super Bowl. Is that right?
Yep, right.
Okay. Well, what are I guess some of your thoughts and impressions of how this one was compared to other ones? Or obviously it was a very good game, which is something we don't get in Super Bowls a whole lot. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I did a bunch of top 10 lists in that book. The final one was games 1 to 46. And let me just, while we're sitting here, let me just look at the 10 greatest games. Okay, my list here. All right, number 1, I had Giants and Patriots in Super Bowl 42. The Tyreek catch and Manning's late drive. Would this game be better than that? It's going to be pretty close. Number 2, the Patriots upsetting the Rams, the greatest show on turf, Brady's first. I think that was a terrific game, decided by Vinatieri's 48-yard field goal at the end. Number 3, I had the Rams and Titans when Mike Jones tackled Kevin Dyson on the 1-foot line. 4, I went back to Super Bowl 10, Steelers and Cowboys, Bradshaw kind of outdoing Roger Staubach. This game here, just a total about-face at the end. It's going to have to be in the top 2 or 3, I think. Yeah, without question.
Sure. What are your thoughts when, you mentioned the Rams-Titans game and the 1-yard line tackle, and there's obviously the most famous one-point Super Bowl with Scott Norwood missing that field goal at the end. Do those games kind of lose their luster when they don't end on that big, when they don't end on a scoring play? Obviously we saw the interception, the controversial call here in this year. Does that maybe take away from it just a little bit because you're not seeing somebody win the game in the last minute? You're seeing somebody just seal the victory?
I don't think so. I just see it as drama, unexpected happenings at the end of these games, and I love defense too. And what Malcolm Butler did. No, I see it as just a fantastic moment in Super Bowl history. When I was in the press box writing my game story the other night, I referred to my book again, the top 10 greatest defensive plays of all time. I had Mike Jones at number 1, and James Harrison, the 100-yard interception return against Arizona, as number 2. This play by Butler, I'm telling you, the degree of difficulty, I right now would probably put it number 1 all time as the greatest defensive play in 49 Super Bowls.
Wow. Nick, any questions there?
Last year I was really surprised at how loud the crowd was for Seattle. Do you know, was it as loud this year, and how Seattle fans compare at the Super Bowl compared to other fans?
Around town all week there was more Seattle, no question. In that press box, at Arizona especially, it's like hermetically sealed. We could hardly hear any crowd noise, so I have no idea about what it was like.
Okay. Why don't we roll back just a little bit? How did you? Obviously, like most boys in this country, we grow up watching and loving football. Where did that love first come from for you, or what was the first moment or game that got kind of instilled that in you?
Mm-hmm. I grew up 2 hours north of Green Bay in Michigan's Upper Peninsula, a town called Escanaba, population 15,000. And so the town was split between the Lions and Packers. The Lions were the state team. The Packers were the closest team. My dad took me to a game at Lambeau Field when I was 7 in 1959, so that was the start of it for me. And in terms of title games, I remembered watching the Eagle. I just can't picture maybe the Colt Giant game in '59. I can't picture that, but I have real clear memories of the Eagle Green Bay title game won by the Eagles at Franklin Field. And then I was a quarterback in high school, good enough to start, not not all conference, but a starter at least. And so then I just followed all sports and never missed a Super Bowl obviously, and just followed them at all. And my first job happened to be at the Green Bay Press-Gazette. I went to the University of Michigan, covered Bo Schembechler's teams for the Campus Daily, and then was hired first time as a full-time guy at Green Bay Press-Gazette and covered high schools and small colleges, worked up to the Packers, and then eventually got on the beat and then switched to the Milwaukee Journal in '91. So, I mean, my career could have gone many other ways, but it just happened to be that my first job was in Green Bay, and I still live in Green Bay.
Okay, yeah. What, I guess for people that have never been there or don't know, I mean, it's obviously the smallest market in the NFL. What is it that just makes it? I mean, obviously they've had a lot of success over the years, but what is it that just makes it such a special place, and a place that really, honestly, maybe shouldn't be able to support an NFL team, but it just works. I mean, I know there's history and tradition, but is there any other reasons out there?
There's not much else here,
Yeah.
I mean, there really isn't. And the Milwaukee Brewers and the Bucks, they're 2 hours away in Milwaukee, and University of Wisconsin is 2.5 hours in Madison. I mean, this is just a one-sport town. High school sports really aren't very good here. They're not very well attended, unfortunately. There's no college football in town. There's a Division I basketball program, Wisconsin Green Bay, but there's really nothing else. And it dominates conversation everywhere you go. Like I played in rec basketball and touch football leagues, and you get together for a few beers at the end of that game, and that's all these guys would talk about really was Packers year round. And it's the kind of market, guys, where I liked working in this market all these years because the people here, they really care not just how good the starting left tackle is, but they want to know about that fourth guard on the roster on the 53. They want to know the 40 time of the fourth safety. This is an X&O hardcore pro football town, not college, not high school, pro. And it controls the culture, it controls society. It's really it's what it is here. And women who come to town with their husbands or who don't happen to, I mean, I think to fit in, a lot of women just feel they have to become football fans and become immersed in this culture and this team, really to just, have conversations with their friends.
Makes a lot of sense. Nick, any questions?
Yeah, right before you came on, we were talking a little bit about the Hall of Fame class this year. I was wondering if there's any thoughts you'd like to give us on Ron Wolf.
Yeah, I'd love to. I covered Ron his entire career here, and I knew him for 15, 20 years before that. You guys have no idea where the Packers were when he took over in late November of '91. It's hard for the fans here now. They just think that, they've been in the playoffs 17 times in the last 23 years, won 2 Super Bowls, I think, 11 division titles. They just think that, it's God's gift that the Packers are going to be in the playoffs and contending every year. Well, it wasn't quite like that for the 24 years before Wolf arrived. They had 2 winning seasons. 3, and 2 playoff berths. I believe 1 division title. Sports Illustrated came in here, the great Frank DeFord, probably the greatest sports writer of his generation. And he came in here in 87 or 88, and he basically kind of said that Green Bay's time was over. That's the way that story ended. It was troubled times in Titletown was the headline, and kind of just said, the good times are over. The Lombardi year is nothing like that. And it's just it was a kind of a sad, melancholy piece, and that was it for Green Bay. Time was up, and the franchise would move or just continue to fail. The stadium was terrible. It was outsized, way too small. There were sexual assault cases here in town that divided the community against the team, involving the great wide receiver James Lofton and a defensive back, Mossy Cade. Those were both jury trials in downtown Green Bay in '87. Lofton was acquitted. Cade was convicted. Terrible drafting. No quarterback after Bart Starr. They had a 20-year search for a quarterback. It was a mom-and-pop operation. I mean, players would have to beg the equipment people for an extra pair of socks. A lot of no-shows. I mean, this is just to think of no-shows now in Lambeau Field, which is this kind of a, on a bucket list for people all around the country. But to think of no-shows, 15,000, 10,000. This was just kind of standard operating. The team was terrible. And Wolf came in here in late November of '91, fired the coach, Lindy Infani, within a month, hired Mike Holmgren a month after that. Holmgren was the hottest assistant in the league. He's coming from San Francisco. He never would have come to Green Bay had it not been for Ron Wolf's credibility. And 3 weeks later, the two of them traded for Brett Favre, a third-string quarterback who really had an alcohol problem in Atlanta. They traded a first-round pick for this third-stringer. And then a year later, when free agency was starting and everybody thought free agency would be the death knell for Green Bay because they couldn't compete, black players wouldn't want to come here, they signed the best free agent in the last of all time, Reggie White. So, and it's really Wolf's driving personality, his unbelievable intelligence, the way he mastered free agency, and his his aggressiveness. He made 87 trades in his 9 years, far more than any other team. He was just kind of a whirlwind, and he attacked this thing, and really through his personality, he turned a loser into a winner. I mean, he found a great coach in Holmgren who brought the 49er way to a franchise. Guys, I would go to the Super Bowl my first 10 years on the beat, and I would just sit there and talk to these assistant coaches and players and scouts from the teams that were there. I was trying to find out what it took to win. I had no idea covering a team in Green Bay for those first 10 years. But, boy, I learned when Wolf came here, and Holmgren, and White, and Brett Favre, and Leroy Butler, and on. And and then he abruptly retired after 9 years, and he just walked away. But he's, the young people here under 35, all they see is winning. But, I mean, I know what the tough times were like, 24 years of really being a bottom feeder.
Yeah, certainly a good, painted a good picture there for us. And if anybody out there was doubting him, I don't think you could really do that now. So, since you cover the Packers so in depthly, is Randall Cobb going to be there next year?
I think they've got to get that done. I mean, he didn't play very good in training camp this year, and he didn't play very good the first month. And I was just thinking, well, geez, here's a slot guy who's a return guy also, but he really wasn't separating. But, boy, those last 14 games, 12 and then 2 playoff, he earned every dime he's going to get, and I think they've got to get that done, and I think they will.
Do you feel like he's going to maybe have to take a little bit less to stay there, and is that going to help or hinder him by any means?
Yeah, I don't think so. The agent is Jimmy Sexton, who's done a lot of deals with the Packers over time, and Sexton's going to be tough, but the Packers are always in good shape under the cap. They've always been really done a great job with cap management, and so they're carrying over. I think it's about $8.5 million from left over this year's cap to next year, and it's just the cost of doing business. And I mean, they got to have Cobb. My final grades of the year, I deliberated for a full week and wrote them on January 25, a week after that Seattle defeat. And I thought long and hard, and I eventually gave Cobb an A- and Jordy Nelson a B+. So I think Cobb just, so he's right there with the best.
Well, and not that you want to think about it, but he just works so well with this team. I mean, what do you think his skill set and somebody else would be able to take advantage? I mean, obviously he's going to make anybody better, but do you think it's going to? I mean, will they understand what he can do, and would it actually work?
Well, you see Julian Edelman. You know Edelman replacing Wes Welker, and we saw what he did in that Super Bowl. I mean, golly, the way he played. I mean, he's probably as good as Randall Cobb. You know. So you think? I mean, he's right there. So I think it's easier to find a slot receiver than it is an outside guy who can, beat premier cornerbacks on the perimeter. But Cobb also has value in the backfield. Green Bay doesn't have a guy like Vereen. We saw what he did in the flats against the Seahawks. And so in the last half of the season, they would use Cobb maybe 5 to 10 snaps in the backfield as their third down scat back. He was very, very effective in that role too. So I think teams see value, and they'd love to have him, but I think Green Bay is going to prevent him from getting on the market.
Okay. Yeah, it's a hard call with guys like that. I mean, he's 24 years old, people. That's it's so attractive to any team, and it'd be nice to see him stay in an age where players don't stay with one team for the entire duration. It'd be nice to see him get locked up. Nick, any other questions there?
Well, getting back to Super Bowl talk, with their fourth Super Bowl win, where would you rank Tom Brady and Bill Belichick as far as all-time lists at their respective positions?
Yeah. I did that in the book. I'm still staying with Joe Montana as the best Super Bowl quarterback and the best of all time. I just his ability. I mean, I covered those games, and it's like poetry in motion. The feet, the arm, the brain. Boy, when he was with Walsh and those 49er teams, I just thought it was just fantastic. And he's got the mobility edge on Brady. Yeah, I mean, to me, he's still number one. It's going to take a lot to knock him off that too. Brady didn't play that great in this game. I mean, those two picks they're both pretty brutal picks. So I see this as really a Malcolm Butler game, and I thought Edelman was tremendous, and Brady played. He led the comeback at the end, obviously, against a terrific defense, one that really shut down Aaron Rodgers 2 weeks earlier. But I think Brady's second or third, somewhere in there.
Okay. Well, any other questions there, Nick?
I think we hit them all.
Okay. Well, Bob, I want to thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it, and I just now got the book this week, so I haven't finished it, but I'm really, really, really enjoying what I've got through so far, and I look forward to finishing it, and look forward to the next edition. We appreciate you stopping by.
Could I just mention that, if anybody would like a personalized copy of that book, I still have several boxes at my house in Green Bay. Just send me an email, and my wife and I do a little small mail order business. We can take care of that and personalize it any way you like. And my email would be bmcginn, MCGINN, @JRN, bmcginn@JRN.com. And we'll take care of you.
All right, sounds good. And you can also get to that from his Twitter page, which will be hot in our write-up for this podcast later tonight.
Cool.
Thank you, Bob, and have a great day.
You guys, thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
All right. Well, that was certainly an interesting outlook, and I love his thoughts on Ron Wolf. That was almost a bio piece there, but it's good inside knowledge to kind of see where that city and that town and that team was and whatnot, and kind of how they came out of it. Great question there, Nick. Moving on, we have best number 7 in NFL history. We don't have to talk about a kicker today, Nick. Unless you have a kicker you really want to talk. I don't know.
Morton Anderson is a Hall of Fame finalist this year. I think we should at least mention his name, right?
Oh, okay.
but yeah, the rest of them are all going to be quarterbacks. You know, a lot of pretty good quarterbacks have worn the number 7. Guys like Boomer Esiason, Ron Jaworski. He's known better now for his work at ESPN, but he was pretty good for Philadelphia back in the day. And, you know, Michael Vick for a brief time was the most exciting player in the NFL. You know, you had Joe Theismann a little bit before that, but really it boils down to 2 guys. First off, you got a 3-time Pro Bowler, 2 Super Bowl wins in 3 appearances, the youngest quarterback to ever win a Super Bowl, Ben Roethlisberger. But, you know, even Big Ben can't, he finishes second to the legendary John Elway. The 1987 NFL Most Valuable Player, 9-time Pro Bowler, and yes, Elway did lose some Super Bowls when he was younger, but you got to look at his supporting cast those years. Like, take 1987, for instance. His best running back was Sammy Winder with 741 yards. They had the 3 amigos at wide receiver, led by Vance Johnson with 684 yards. Also, Mark Jackson, Ricky Nattiel. The only 2 other Pro Bowlers on that team that he took to a Super Bowl were guard Keith Bishop and linebacker Carl Mecklenburg. I don't know if a quarterback has ever done as much with as little to work with as John Elway did there in the 80s with Denver.
Yeah, no, most definitely. A couple names that pop up in this book I have by the numbers of George Halas. I don't know why the coaches keep popping up, but he's also listed as number 7 for the Bears. And then a center by no stretch of the imagination. The center used to wear number 7 for the Giants back in the 30s and 40s by the name of Mel Heen, who is also a Hall of Famer. But, yeah, you know, I can honestly say, being a Raiders fan since the moment I watched football, Marcus Allen against your Redskins, of course, I have nothing but a world of respect for John Elway. I mean, I had a John Elway jersey when I was a kid, and I was a Raiders fan. I think that's maybe the ultimate respect. I didn't collect NFL jerseys when I was a kid. I had probably about 15 different teams. But, I mean, Elway was just everything you wanted your quarterback to be. I mean, he could do the pocket passing thing. You know, that wasn't necessarily an issue back in the day, but he had rockets. I mean, you know, you talk to some of those receivers, and they have permanent, like, welts in their sternum for how hard he threw that ball. And he could run. I mean, he had that flair where he'd go out there and put his, you know, he wouldn't slide. He'd put his shoulder down and get that first down. I mean, he did everything that you want your quarterback to do. And, you know, he's somebody that I don't know why he's not in that conversation with best quarterback ever, because like you said, he was on some awful teams that he just dragged, almost kicking and screaming into the playoffs when you know, in those late 80s, and they didn't even have any business being in the Super Bowl against your Redskins or anything like that. And yeah, there's no accounting for there. I think Big Ben, personally, while I totally respect him, and I think he's an excellent quarterback, and it's kind of hard for me not to look at him as a fantasy player because, you know, obviously I'm being heavily involved in fantasy since his NFL career. It's kind of hard to take a step back and look at that, but I think he's certainly, you know, the beneficiary of some good teams. And, you know, those Steelers defenses that won Super Bowls with him were pretty darn awesome. You know, not completely, you know, best top 5 defensive of all time conversation, but they rode those guys pretty hard. And yes, Big Ben has the ability to extend and make plays with his legs, and I give him all the credit for doing that. But yeah, next to Elway, I don't think there should be another thing. And you know, while we're speaking about it, and it's something that keeps going and rattling in my head, but when we're talking about the best quarterback ever, yes, I think Elway should be mentioned. But, you know, we go back and forth, Nick, we hear Brady, you know, and is Peyton Manning in this conversation? Can we just knock on wood or whatever and just stop the conversation? Just Peyton Manning is a Hall of Famer. I mean, why does he have to be the best ever, or why do we have to debate him versus Tom Brady? I mean, they're both Hall of Famers, right?
Yes, they're definitely both Hall of Famers, but I think with 4 Super Bowl wins, the debate's pretty much over now as far as Brady versus Peyton.
Yeah, most definitely. Well, each and every week we do a little something that we like to call Nick Rants. It's where I give my co-host the floor to kind of just rant about something that's bothering him. And we're going to have to talk about food after this. I just remember that. But what do you got for us today, bud?
Well, this week I just want to congratulate the Atlanta Falcons. You guys finally got your head coach, Dan Quinn, the Seattle defensive coordinator for the last 2 years. And I'd say you did the best of any team hiring a coach this offseason. Let's look at the new head coaches. First off, I want to say I'm not a big fan of the so-called retread coaches who are head coaches for some other NFL team. It just seems that rarely are coaches as good at their second stop. Even the great Bill Parcells never won a title after leaving the Giants. So, while I don't hate Rex Ryan in Buffalo, John Fox in Chicago, Jack Del Rio in Oakland, or Gary Kubiak in Denver, those hires don't really get me that excited either, especially Kubiak, given the fact that he was always backup. Cronyism always concerns me a little bit there. But so that leaves 3 other coaches that are kind of up-and-comers. In San Francisco, you got Jim Tomsula. He's been with the organization since 2007 as the defensive line coach and was the team's interim head coach for a game in 2010. And, then we also have Todd Bowles, who I am partial to, given that he was a skin when I was growing up. But even without the bias, he was definitely deserving of a job. He's been rising up the coaching ranks since entering as a secondary coach for the Jets in 2000. He's been Arizona's defensive coordinator the last 2 years, done a great job there. He's definitely deserved an opportunity at a head coaching spot. But by far the candidate with the most upside is Dan Quinn. Some argued last year that Seattle's defense was the best of all time. That's debatable, but over the last 2 years, I think they've put the best defense out on the field that we've seen since the Ravens, probably under Marvin Lewis's watch. And they've been doing it without a lot of high draft picks, too, or big money free agents. Cliff Averill and Michael Bennett signed fairly modest free agent contracts. Cam Chancellor and Richard Sherman, both mid-round picks that he helped coach up. It just seems like teams are in such a rush once the season ends to get their head coach so they can also hire the staff and begin all the off-season preparation. But what good is it if you don't have the right guy as the head coach? So hats off to Atlanta for being patient, identifying the top candidate for the job, and landing him.
I think they also great work, by the way. But they also, I think, are finally identifying a need that they just need their defense to grow a pair. I mean, they have been so porous over the last 2 years. It's been disgusting. And a team that we had high aspirations for a couple of years ago, and who knows? They have the offensive players in place. And we're not saying Dan Quinn is going to get the Falcons to the Super Bowl next year. It's certainly a process, but they have to be very excited about what they have coming in, and maybe he can even lure a guy like Byron Maxwell that way, or any other Seattle free agents in the future. I mean, there's certainly, you did, what did you call it, cronyism? There's that mentality. Some of that mentality there, but I think Atlanta Falcons fans, you will be rewarded for your patience, and I would love to see him as the next head coach of my Oakland Raiders. So if that's a compliment, I guess you can take it as, and it's no disrespect to Jack Del Rio by any means. I'm certainly ready to plunge forward with him. So great rant. Always nice to hear the rant. So, Johnny Manziel has checked himself into rehab. What are your thoughts there? And I also threw out the idea that maybe Cleveland should get Michael Vick as possibly a mentor for Johnny Manziel, as a guy who has made some mistakes in his life and has, moved forward to, have some mild success, we'll say, at the NFL. What are your thoughts there on that whole situation?
Well, to start off with Johnny Manziel, I haven't been quiet as far as my dislike for Manziel as a player. I don't think he's got what it takes to succeed in the NFL. That being said, I wish him nothing but luck and the best in dealing with his demons there. We talked about addiction a little last week in regards to Josh Gordon, and wouldn't wish that on anybody, and hopefully he can get things straightened out there. As far as Michael Vick being a mentor, it's actually a pretty good idea. 5 years ago I would have said no, but now, Vic does seem to have really gotten things straightened out, and he can provide a spark on the field and mentor off the field. I think that'd be a great signing for Cleveland.
Well, it didn't work for Geno Smith, but I think there was why we wanted to make them as similar as possible. I think the Vic Manziel comparison is certainly a little more spot on, with the size, the big arm, maybe accuracy isn't their best weapon, but Vic can just take him under his wing, and just say, this is how you're going to have to deal with this stuff if you want to get past it. I think Vic has essentially gotten past that. There'll obviously be people, Peat and whatnot, who will always hold that grudge and whatnot, and rightfully so. There's no reason to just push that under the rug. He made some awful mistakes. How directly involved in that, we really don't know. But he certainly was funding that situation. So, as far as Manziel, this is a guy that people seem to either like or hate, and I like to see the fact that he's making a mature decision. I think some reports came out when this happened of him going to rehab that maybe that this was NFL enforced and not necessarily something that Johnny wanted to do. But I think as things have become clearer now that he clearly made this decision for the betterment of himself, whether it's going to make him a better football player, only time will tell. So it's an interesting situation that we're going to have to see. Cleveland, I think him and Connor Shaw are the only quarterbacks on that roster right now, so Cleveland will obviously have to probably sign another free agent type of quarterback, whether they bring back Brian Hoyer or whatnot. We don't know yet, but that'll all become clear here in the next couple of months. But, Nick, what do you think? Does Johnny Manziel under center week 1 for Cleveland next year?
Most likely. I think it's his job to lose going into training camp.
Yeah, I asked you because I didn't really know what to say. I didn't know if he was going to be a week 1 starter or not. But, it's a different situation.
There are rumors that Cleveland is looking to trade up for a quarterback in the draft, and if that happens, then of course all bets are off the table. But I think as it stands, right, unless they draft a quarterback in round 1, I think Manziel probably starts week 1.
It'll be interesting, and I know I say that word a lot, but it'll be interesting to see who they bring in as a backup or competition, whatever you want to call it. But certainly a lot to be written in that story, and I applaud Johnny for making the mature decision, whether it would be the first mature decision he's ever made or whatnot. But I applaud him for making the decision, and I certainly wish him all the best. Otherwise, that's all we got. Nick, do you have anything else to add? Any final thoughts? Theories?
No, just wow, what an amazing Super Bowl we just got to witness. Got to feel lucky for a game that great.
It was certainly edge of your seat. I couldn't ask for anything more. But you went to a party with hosted by some chefs. I guess it was a potluck. So what did you Did you enjoy any fine cuisine?
Well, the potluck actually fell through, but I went to a different barbecue hosted also by some chefs, and had some great barbecue food, and good food, good people, good beer, good times.
You just live in a condo full of chefs or something? You just fall into these things?
Well, I've been working in the restaurant industry for 20 years, so I know a few people.
Yeah. How soon did I forget? Yes, you've got connections, definitely. So, we want to thank you for joining us. This has been the RotoRob Fantasy Football Weekly Podcast. Next week, we have Jamie Plunkett from frogsofwar.com, an SB Nation site devoted to TCU athletics. We're going to talk about some horned frogs. Is it horned frogs or horned frogs? I think it's horned frogs. We're going to talk about some horned frogs prospects. And also Matt Brown from Land Grant Holy Land, which is a Ohio State Buckeyes SB Nation athletic site. So we'll talk about some Buckeye prospects there, and maybe he can tell us what's going on with that quarterback situation. So looking forward to that. Following weeks, we'll be bringing you free agencies and, of course, our team previews moving forward. So thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. I want to thank Jack Follman from Pacific Takes for giving us so much lowdown. We really appreciate that, and him coming back. Jovontay Williams, ready to tear it up as hopefully a late round pick, and of course Bob McGinn for stopping by to give us the Green Bay Packers / Super Bowl history lesson. So we appreciate that, and hope you enjoyed the show.
Thanks for listening to the RotoRob Fantasy Football Weekly Podcast with Nick. Hail to the Redskins, Wagner, and my dad, Joshua Johnson. This is so much more than a fantasy show.